Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. I'm Alexander Finbow. I'm the publisher at Renegade Arts Entertainment here in snowy Canmore in the Rocky Mountains. And I am joined today by two awesome creators. I have Ryan Harby, who you may know from the Honey Dill webcomics. And we had the privilege of publishing his first collection of comics titled Awkward Pause. Very funny, whimsical, and very recommended for Christmas. And there's the cover. And I'm also joined by Derek Evernden, Alberta-based cartoonist responsible for Bogart Creek. Very funny, very dark. And we are happy to have just released Bogart Creek Volume 2, the second collection of Derek's cartoons. How you doing, guys?
Good, how are you?
Very good. Very festive today.
Yes.
And yeah, you're both wearing Christmas sweaters, and I didn't have the time to grab mine, but just assume that in spirit, I'm all Christmas out.
Yeah. You got the toque. We don't have toques, so it evens out.
There you go.
With the full South Park effect.
I was just assuming that Christmas had been cancelled in Winnipeg, but maybe I'm
That's right. We all agreed uniformly, just we don't even talk about it.
Just put it on hold until the end of 2021.
Yeah, then it'll be double Christmas.
Ryan, you said your son's, you had just said before we went live that your son's 19 months old. So you could technically like not tell him about Christmas this year and you probably wouldn't even know what he's missing, right?
That's true, but we're starting to get out of that period where, you know, he's remembering things. He knows who Santa is. He expects Santa. He's got big expectations for Santa.
Oh, that's it. Cat's out of the bag. You're screwed.
Yeah. I don't know if he knows that Santa is coming or when Santa comes, but Santa's a friend.
Bizarre.
Well, thank you for joining me today on your busy cartooning schedules. I think it would be a good idea if you guys could tell us a little bit about how you started and the journey that took you to where you are now.
Sure.
Yeah, you go first. Alphabetical.
Okay.
Non-alphabetical.
I'll talk a little bit about my comic because, that's kind of what led to this book. So I started making comics specifically that I wanted to publish online about 5 years ago, in 2015. In 5 years, a lot has kind of evolved from my comic production process, but a few years ago I was in a place where kind of I had this full-time job, and I was doing kind of all this stuff that I wanted to do at the time, but one thing that I didn't really have much of was kind of I didn't have much of a creative outlet. And I've kind of always been somebody who is, no matter what I'm doing, I've always got like some weird thing on the back burner that I'm like keeping myself entertained with as far as like something creative. And that's what this comic of mine started as something, like I was working at an advertising agency, doing a lot of stuff that we don't have a lot of say in, or at least I didn't. And so I really like the idea of like just putting this thing together. And in this case, like this comic where I have like totally selfish creative control from beginning to end. So I'm responsible if it's funny, I'm responsible if it doesn't make any sense, you know, all that stuff. So I just started putting them together with the idea of putting something out in my own voice about every week. And like I say, like in the span of like a handful of years, it's evolved. It's kind of become one thing and then another. And eventually, 5 years in, like I had a lot of content that I did get in a tangible form that people can hold in their hands, they can physically love. So this is kind of a compilation of my favorite stuff as part of that like initial journey to having this weird creative outlet. That's kind of what got me here, but I don't know.
So do you still post weekly, or like do you have a strict schedule?
Not super strict anymore. The idea is weekly, but certainly in the last year with COVID, there's a lot of times where you just kind of like accept what the schedule is as far as like your own life, and roll with the punches. I think the idea for me always is to try and do something weekly. Sometimes I get like 2 or 3 things out in the week and I feel, over the moon. And then that kind of, for maybe the week where something doesn't happen, or the couple of weeks where like you're slammed with something else. So yeah, at one point I was like, yeah, it's got to be strict. And then I don't know, I feel like we're in a point with like web comics and publishing things online where you could do that, or it's okay not to, depending on kind of what your process is.
Do you usually have like a backlog of stuff that you draw from? Like, do you have it sort of planned out a few weeks in advance, or do you post as you go? Like, is the one that you just posted most recently, did that come out that same week? Like, did you draw it and conceive of it that same week?
Yes, actually there's one that came out today that I pretty much finished just last night. And that kind of ebbs and flows with life as well. Like I really do enjoy getting that space to get a bunch of ideas and really start like whittling them down and start really kind of rewriting some of the things that you think would work well. But at the moment, I just happen to be in a space where I'm kind of like, I'm right at the publishing date. I'm just kind of doing it. But as things go, it'll be nice to kind of build that back up. I'm hoping coming up soon that I might be able to get like a good work day of just writing, which is one of the hardest things, oddly, sometimes to make time for, because sometimes it doesn't feel like you're actually working when you're like focusing on writing only.
I didn't realize I'm skipping over my part where I tell my backstory, but I have so many questions myself because
no.
I feel like we have different approaches, and I'm amazed at what works for other cartoonists.
I definitely want to hear your backstory. I'm not going to let you skip that.
Well, I can segue into it by saying that when I started Bogart Creek, which I think was in 2017, I'd have to go back to my first letters to Alexander to know for sure, because it was that same, it was within a few months of starting, I think, that I figured, what the hell, I'll write a publisher and see what happens. I know I met this guy at the Lethbridge Comic Con 4 years previously. He seemed really nice. But when I launched, I had about 100 jokes already written. And I was actually posting daily at the beginning, and then I started to realize that slowly the water level was dropping, and I was going to run out. So then I figured a schedule that I've stuck to ever since, which is Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, with Thursdays now being sort of low pressure day, where I usually, what I do is, now that I've got so many jokes in the backlog in the archives, and including some that I've never posted, that I'll just go back and like color really, really old ones that, my audience of 2 had only seen back in the day, and post them for my larger audience now. And, it's sometimes humbling when those get more laughs, because I'm like, oh, great. So I'm getting worse. But yeah, now I'm at the point where I basically go, I've got maybe enough for 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and then I start to panic. But I naturally panic anyway. It's just my nature. I think Alexander can probably speak to that. Yeah, no, I started Bogart Creek. It's funny that you mentioned that you have a background in advertising, because I did as well. I was a freelancer doing graphic design back in Toronto, and wound up working at an ad agency after, bouncing around as a freelancer to various ones. Had a job as an art director for about 4.5 years. Basically every year I got talking to about my attitude problems, and it was mainly because I was just the whole time I was in Toronto, I was just generally angry. Like I realize now it's crazy for an introvert to be in among 6 million people. And I just, I can't imagine how difficult I must have been to just complete strangers. Yeah, so when I was at the agency, I may have done well with my job responsibilities, but as far as just sort of being nice and getting along, it didn't go so great. And I really didn't have any sort of zenness until I moved out west and into first the Rockies. Blairmore, stayed at the Gushel Studio, an artist residence run by University of Lethbridge. Started to get my blood pressure down there. Started to think about what I wanted to do other than just be angry and tread water to pay rent for a shoebox. Then my wife and I just decided, we don't want to go back to living in a city. So she started looking around, and we found a place in a little village of about, depending on who you ask, 90 to 120 people. And the rest is history. And as soon as I moved in here, the creative juices started flowing. And it didn't, the way, the ebb and flow, to borrow your phrase, of freelancing also kind of was helpful with that, even though it does add to a certain level of anxiety, and that it's feast or famine, right? And when I first got here, it was feast. Like I had a ton of work carried over from Toronto, doing storyboard work and other graphic design support for, largely for one client. It's a filmmaking company that does like giant screen movies. I guess I can say the name of the film. It was a film called Super Power Dogs. Really fun, awesome film that came out recently about all the different ways that dogs help people save their lives, basically, whether it's psychologically or physically around the world. And when that work kind of started to fizzle out, there came a point where I just had months without really anything really intense. And within that window, I just was like, okay, well, I'm in the middle of the prairie. I can't go knocking on doors. So I just started drawing cartoons, and with the idea that I'd get into the New Yorker, which I've realized my temperament or my tastes really don't align very well with them. But that was that first try. So my stuff was very safe and dry. And then I found when I was sharing it with friends, it was a stuff where there was like, a little decapitation here, a little blood splatter there, that they responded most to and that I enjoyed the most. And the ideas kept on sort of coming in that sort of darker vein. It just became Bogart Creek. Bogart Creek is named after the creek that ran through the farmlands behind my house growing up, where my brother and our friends and I climbed trees and shot bows and arrows dangerously close to one another. And so I figured that's an appropriate name for a place that's sort of become my playground again. And despite it sounding that family circusy, it's wound up being a rather dark and absurd place to visit. But it's sort of like a bit of exposure therapy for me when I'm doing the cartoons. I'm imagining worst case scenarios a lot of the time. Yeah.
I want to. I was just flipping through this. The first volume. I wanted to share one that I really like. That I think is like, okay, so this one.
Oh, that's really old. Yeah.
Well, it's not like there's other ones that I kind of earmarked that really struck me, but I like this one. It's kind of got that kind of see there. It's like the pirate hot air balloon.
Balloon pirates, yeah.
Yeah, but I like it because it's like, I don't know. It's kind of dark, but it's kind of like, I don't know. It's not that dark. It's kind of wholesome as well.
All right. Well, here's the one that made me laugh out loud from your book. Well, I got a lot of chuckles, but the vampire drawing himself on the mirror. Because you don't do a ton of single panels, but I thought that's just brilliant. It reminded me of one of my favorite comedies, What We Do in the Shadows. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
Very good.
Yeah.
I've seen the movie and one episode of the TV show, and I'd really like to see more of the TV show because I hear really good things.
Cool. Well, I completely forgot there was one, so I'll have to another one to binge. That's awesome. Once I finish Mandalorian and.
The only trick is in Canada, the TV show exists in that weird area where it's a channel in the States that doesn't get picked up a ton in Canada, so it's harder to find.
Gosh, I just realized I was drinking from my my shameless self-promotion Bogart Creek mug here, and they're right up in the sky there.
There you go.
Yeah, they go. That's sort of, yeah, that's one of my oldest comics, and I guess that was probably going back to when I was like dreaming of being a New Yorker artist, because it was whimsical and an inward chuckle,
Yeah, something witty with very minimal dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But can I ask you guys a question? You started doing your cartoons, but then how did you start building an audience for them?
Well, Ryan's got 7 times as followers that I do, so I'm actually curious what he says.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Over the past few years, there's definitely some lessons that I've learned about that, and some of it I feel like I've learned like what not to do more than any surefire bet to gain more followers. Definitely right off the hop, anytime you see something that is advertising buying followers or just doing some sort of shortcut to reach people or anything like that, it's an obvious no. Don't do it. Don't ever do it. I would even say like campaigns on social media to get like your whatever your posts out there a little bit more. I would even say don't do that. Don't ever do that, because it's just not, in my experience, it's not worth it. It's a waste of your productivity. It doesn't actually reach the people that you want to be reaching, and sometimes it might even hurt, or I think it does hurt your engagement, because you're constantly engaging with these people that do, or in a lot of times do not want to actually be seeing your content. And every time I see that, like especially on Instagram or Facebook, like, oh hey, you could be boosting this. That's for like big companies. That's for big companies that are desperate to have some sort of social media engagement and make it look like their account is doing super well. Like if you see like all these brands have social media presences, but it doesn't make sense for a lot of them to actually have a lot of followers. So if you see like a really big whatever, just pick a brand that provides that does like dishwasher detergent, and go find their social media account, and there's like 1 million followers. And if you look at any of their posts, they've got an incredibly low engagement, but they need, for whatever reason, I guess, for the status, you need that huge amount of followers. So all that stuff, like just all of that waste of money that like for your posts and stuff like that, not all the time, but most of the time, leave that for the big companies to waste their money on.
Cartoonists don't have very much money to burn anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's way more effective to actually just focus on your content and not worry about so much about how, like the mechanisms of how it's reaching people. If it is reaching people, then it'll be, it starts out slow and it kind of grows and it kind of snowballs. And it's sort of the same way that it's worked for a long time, passing around, your favorite music on like a cassette tape or whatever. Like it sort of has like, it's a long-winded way for me to say, just focus on your own content, because even just from year to year, looking at my stuff, I think to myself, oh wow, like it's really hard to see it in the moment, but like personally, my writing was growing and my arts, get to a place where I feel much more confident, even if I'm not like, even if somebody could look at it and be like, it looks the same. Like I know personally, I'm more confident in the decisions that I'm making and what I'm putting out there, and that will have much more of an impact with the people who are actually reading, and will kind of help that snowball effect. Like basically just training yourself to focus on your own work, do stuff that that really speaks to yourself, and then that will make it that much more appealing to anybody who might be reading.
Do you focus mainly on Instagram and Facebook, or did you start off on Tumblr like a lot of people, or Reddit, or Imgur, however you want to pronounce it?
I mostly started on like Twitter and Instagram. There are some platforms that I don't mess with too much because it's, I don't know, like you can put your stuff like so many places online. But that doesn't mean that you need to spread yourself so thin in terms of like what you're able to do with your time. So like I tried a little bit of Tumblr for a while, but I think I was too late to that party. Like it seems like I never know what I get out of Tumblr lately. Like I don't spend much time there. And places like Imgur, like however you pronounce it.
I say Imgur. It seems better. Imgur sounds like you burped or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what about tapas or line webtoons? Like you've got sequential art, sequential comics, right? So they're kind of designed for that type of format. It's vertical scrolling, mind you, so you'd have to shuffle the deck a little bit. But you know, I despite myself, have posted stuff there anyway, even though single panels are just that. You know, like they don't really, you don't need to scroll. But I see a lot of people pop over to Instagram already having a massive following on tapas, for example. And, you know, they basically hit the ground running with 80,000 fans, you know, because they've already built that following. And the nice thing, of course, about tapas is it plugs right into your Patreon account as well.
It's true. Yeah, I do like that. Yeah, no, I post stuff on tapas as well. And there's been times where I just took breaks from it because, I don't know, it's one of those things you always have to weigh, like, what like, no judgment platform itself, but like me personally, like you just have to weigh what is worth your time, and how much time you actually have during the day, which is something that's like, that definitely comes to mind a lot for me, like with my son and childcare and everything. Like you do like do and how much you have in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So tapas is good. Like I've been part of like a creator program on there for a few months now, and they're nice people. But like anything, like it can be a good platform, like anything, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, they can be good platforms for you, or they might not be. But it's kind of, that part is kind of up to you to figure out, if, again, like just repeating myself, if it's worth your time. Like for example, on Tapas and on Webtoon, there's a ton of like you say, narrative content, but more so than my stuff, it's like there's a ton of long form narrative content. And that is like by and large the most popular thing there.
Manga vampire love stories.
Exactly. So like if I decide to post stuff there, I'm not gonna take it personally or grumble about the fact that, you know, how come so many more people are reading these long form.
Yeah,
that's what the platform, that's what's successful on that platform. So if I go into that kind of eyes open, then,
mind you, like I think Mr. Lovenstein's on there, and he's done very well. I think in his stuff is 3 panels, is it 3 or 4 panels? I don't know. Is a creator account, that's sort of like the tier where you're getting paid, right? Like that's, you've got a certain number of followers, and is that right? Or is a creator account just like mean that you're posting original content?
I honestly think they change it every year. And the partnership that I have with Tapas is more so just based on ad views. it's basically similar to what anybody else can do on Tapas. It's just kind of a slightly altered version of that, but it's based on that.
I've been meaning to go back, so maybe I'll take another look. I spread myself really thin. Like I don't know if it's paranoia that I want to have the @Bogart Creek on every platform before someone else gets it, or if it's just that I never know what's going to stick. Like I started off on Facebook and Instagram, and I've actually found that the most gratifying feedback and responses that I get is from Imager. It's just wonderful, super nerd land. You know, they before I did, any of the jokes for my 2 books were locked in. I tried them out on with that audience because they're merciless. You know, they're not mean like Reddit can be, are funny or whatever on Reddit, but nothing gets past them. Like if there was a Mad TV sketch that was 30 seconds long, like 10 years ago, and it's actually happened, and I did a joke that touched upon the same theme, somebody will say, "Oh, you're copying Mad TV, right?" Like they don't let you get away with anything, which is great, and makes it really warm and fuzzy when they actually say, "Good job," because that they're considering basically everything in comedy history, and still saying, like you're not a Far Side ripoff, like some titles that I won't name.
That is a scary thing about the internet, where I mean, there's everything on the internet, right? So like, the more you put out there, eventually you're going to hear from somebody, oh, is this a reference to like the most obscure thing you've ever heard of? Like, basically, I've seen a bunch where it's like, is this a reference to like this meme that was a response to like this tweet that was like super popular for like 1 month? Most of the time you just have to be like, no, I'm sorry, it's not.
Yeah, there are terms that I've never heard of, references I've never gotten, but at least it gives me the feeling like, despite my age, my middle age, I'm not completely out of the loop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. Yeah. So I always get a little bit anxious when I post to Imager, but I always am really excited afterwards. I only do it like I do comic dumps, so I'll like put up like 20 jokes in one go, rather than, because they're not interested in just like one. They want to feast, So it's a good way to sort of, it's on off with the Band-Aid kind of feedback thing, which I like.
But like you were saying with like spreading yourself too thin, like I remember maybe a year ago I got to a point where I just thought my attention was too divided, so I kind of pulled a few things off the internet, and I limited myself to, at the time, to basically three social media platforms. And I basically told myself, like, let's actually focus on these so that you can kind of get better at using these rather than being like so at using a bunch of things.
Right.
And since like I appreciate that. I mean, it's good for your mental health to do that, for sure. And since then, I've kind of like back to a couple platforms, but it's definitely worthwhile to do that every now and then. Just kind of like focus on your most fundamental stuff.
Yeah, it's got to stay fun. Bottom line, otherwise, your work's going to suffer, right?
Yeah. I mean, you'll end up back to that place where you're just like not happy at the working advertising, right? Like, because you're just like, you keep doing something over and over again and getting whatever results.
Yeah, I'm so grateful actually. When I was doing advertising, I really wanted to draw more on the job, but it's probably lucky that I didn't, because it might have made drawing something that felt like a burden rather than recreation. So that was lucky, but I was pretty ticked off initially, because I thought that I was going to be doing storyboards and stuff like that, and it wound up being a lot drier. But I mean, the people were great. It's just the work was kind of, it's advertising.
Sure. Yeah. Which means like long hours.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I was at a company that didn't do the whole like burn out till 3 a.m. or every weekend kind of thing. Like a lot of those places are ravenous. I don't know if that was your experience. Mine was more sort of punch in, punch out, fortunately, but even still, I don't know. I didn't have the temperament for it at all. I can't do office work. Whether it's the germophobia of just sharing the same air as 1,000 people, from floor to floor, the public bathrooms, the doorknobs, or if it's the being consistently up at the same time every day, and being on, every day consistently, being, dealing with a huge range of people and always saying the right thing.
Okay, I see some questions here. There's a couple questions from Shay. And I thought maybe I saw one from Nico earlier, but I don't.
Yeah, there was a couple. There was one in the chat from Nico, but my chat's been wiped with having to reboot. But basically, he was asking if you guys have noticed much of an impact during COVID to the work you're putting out and creativity, and also to the interactions. Like, did people tune out, or did more people tune in?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I don't know if I noticed more people. I didn't notice people tune out, or at least maybe it like just for small periods, but I don't know. The odd thing was, at least for me, I saw the engagement sort of fluctuate a little bit with the way people were kind of reading stuff, but not much. I mean, the weirdest part was, I think, the first couple months when everybody was trying to figure out what we should be posting online, what is kind of a respectful thing to do, given like we're all still, like, especially early on, we're still figuring out like how serious is everything, and then eventually this weird normalization kind of blanketed everything, and it sort of felt normal again. But I don't know, like, is it something that you ever felt, like, Derek, is it something that you ever felt like you wanted to really touch on in your content, or like is something that it affected your content?
COVID?
Yeah.
Specifically? Well, it's funny that the two, so I've got some of my jokes up on Cartoon Collections, the licensing site that's run by Bob Menkoff from the New Yorker, former cartoon editor for the New Yorker, and they're aligned with Cartoon Stock, which I think is the UK sort of partner or something. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, this stuff that I've found has been moving the most since I posted stuff there, and that also happened during COVID, happens to be two jokes that I did before COVID, but that are nonetheless, like, it's because I'm a bit of a germaphobe or hypochondriac, so they were already jokes. One was about a virus, sure. And one was about a guy licking a doorknob, and so those ones have done well, but I haven't specifically written any jokes where I try to capitalize on the pandemic or anything like that. It's funny, like the COVID one was sort of virus one. It was a virus that looked a lot like the COVID virus, and it was floating in plasma, and it was writing a letter to its mom saying, hey, I finally went viral, wah wah wah, and I colored it and posted it as one of my Throwback Thursday posts, and it's one of my biggest ones on Instagram. It got like 100,000 likes, and I don't know, just crazy numbers of comments. I haven't read them because I just know I'll get freaked out. After a certain number, I don't want to read the comments. That just the rabbit hole that you never want to go down. So I haven't noticed. If anything, I've noticed that my followers, the number of people following and commenting, and the engagement overall has gone up because people are home more. So all that stuff about like snagging them in between on their lunch break or something when you post isn't as much of a concern.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like I know personally, I think a little bit less about like what day of the week is it, or is it the weekend, or am I worried that nobody's going to be reading stuff on the internet? That's people are going to be doing that constantly all the time.
Yeah, like you can't get a clear, a consistent opinion if you look around for the best time to post anymore. It used to be more cut and dried, but people are on all the time now. Doesn't seem to matter, which is great.
In a way.
2020 was a tricky one from a publishing point of view.
No doubt.
Like partly because there were so many other important things out there, like the pandemic and all the information that needed to be shared about that, and the stress that people were going through, and then the dumpster fire that was America, particularly with Trump and then Black Lives Matter. And it really felt like, from our point of view, we were launching new books, but we didn't want to suck any of the air out of the very important campaigns going on.
Yeah.
And the campaigns to finally sort out some of the Indigenous problems in Canada. And it just felt like every time I was going to say, hey, we've got a new book coming out, it's a horror action romance, it was just like, no, it just does not feel appropriate to be promoting our stuff. So we ended up going around in a circle, constantly going, well, we need to do some promotion, but we also don't want to be diverting attention away. What the hell do we do? So
Yeah,
it was tough.
So conscientious. I mean, yeah, it's not like you were drafting on those causes or anything like that, right?
Yeah,
I kind of felt like I'm posting totally irrelevant stuff that's just to make people laugh, hopefully, and it's not commenting on. I mean, being a political cartoonist right now would be stressful as hell, I'd imagine, depending on your temperament, right?
Yeah.
I imagine it would be just hard to make good jokes. Like you just have to be really on point right now to say something specifically about like the moment that is like poignant and like funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm a straight white guy. I have nothing to contribute.
Yeah, no, I found
that was a great awkward pause. Sorry.
No, I found like earlier this year, you definitely consider like, what is the role of doing something like satirical or doing something absurd in a moment where we're focused on such like important and practical things. Like, what are you almost have to realign your perspective to think like, what am I being absurd about? Like, what is this attention away from, or what am I heightening? Because it's like you do have to recalibrate a little bit, or at least I found that helped.
You've got to be conscious of it for sure. Know what's going on in the world. There have been some times when I've posted a joke dangerously close to, like, I posted a joke that was it was in, I think it's in the latest book that showed it was the first lookout tower, and the tower is falling over and a guy's yelling, "Look out!" Wah wah wah. And I posted that, not realizing I posted that almost on the anniversary of 9/11. I missed it just by dumb luck, right? Like I wasn't even thinking about the context. But if I put that up on the day, I would have justifiably, I think, been taken to task, if not crucified for it, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's good to read the news, but I've tried political cartooning, and it's always picking fights and defending yourself, and you have to be so informed. So my policy has just been generally just like, gallows humor has its place in a time like this, and I think can be healing. But you just don't want it to be too on the nose. Anyway, didn't mean to take away from your address regarding the difficulties of actual like print publishing, though, Alexander. That must have been really, really frustrating.
Well, I think the problem from my point of view is, like, the stuff that you guys were doing was great. And I think it made a difference. Like, people needed a laugh and a distraction, and some of the cartoons that you both do, like, cross humor with other like emotions, whether it's like the mental health stuff that you cover, Ryan, or just some of the nostalgia that you get into, Derek, and that's brilliant. It makes us all laugh and carries us away for a little bit, and that's awesome. From when you're trying to market stuff, you feel a little bit dirty trying to put stuff into the middle of it all. But we have to do it, right? We have to let people know the books are out there and they're awesome, and people need to find them and order them from the local bookstores if possible.
So I have a selfish question that I'd like to find the answer to. So in this volume 1, Bogart Creek, the author photo,
Yeah.
the back,
Mm-hmm.
that is so great and so elaborate. I want to know how you did this.
Well, thank you, first of all. And it was a little self-indulgent, but it was my first book. So my wife, Jillian, is an amazing photographer and filmmaker. She runs so I'm going to plug her business now. She runs a studio in Calgary called Studio Lumen. And they do all sorts of stuff for local as well as, businesses from afar. And I just happened to have a window where she could, take all her gear out onto a neighbor's farm in the middle of the summer. It was a sweltering hot day. And we lugged out my drafting table. Like there is Photoshoppery obviously going on in that picture, but the actual drawing table in the middle of the cattle ranch is real. And basically just had a chair that I was jumping off of, and I Photoshopped it out so that I got a little more air because I'm not the most athletic fellow. And then for the papers, I had all these prints of all the jokes that were in the book, and I was waiting for a breeze to just throwing them up in the air, and she was taking pictures over and over again. So they would have the right, tonal values and whatnot, so that later on I could stitch them all together and make it look like they're all coming off of the drafting table. So
do you remember how many times you had to jump for the photo shoot?
my back was starting to go. So it was probably about 10 or 11 times, I think. And so I was always trying to get, like some nice verticality or do the Jordan pose and stuff. But all I could really do was a pathetic little like Irish jig type hop. It was just, it was kind of sad, but, yeah. So, and I was always also afraid I was going to come crashing down right into the drafting table as well.
I like it. It's definitely it's in my top 5 author pictures.
Thank you very much.
Who the other 4 are, but it's top 5.
Okay, there's a question from Shay here. Ryan, have you started to think about writing longer narratives?
Yes, I have, and I kind of am doing it a little bit here and there lately. I really enjoy doing just something silly and short, and sometimes confounding, but longer narratives is really fun too, because you get to play around with more situational awkward stuff rather than there being something that's a little bit more of a traditional punchline to something. And sometimes the punchline of the comic just comes by the fact that there is an end to it. Like you read like 3 panels or 4 panels or whatever, and then it's done. And the punchline is just the fact that you have to stop reading. So that's that's where you get kind of the emphasis. But I do like to do longer form stuff. I did one just recently with 2 characters, Gideon and Bartholomew. And I like doing stuff like that because I like the idea that something like that could be collected and somebody could have an experience with like characters that they feel, emotions about, rather than I don't know, it's just a different experience, and I like giving yourself the freedom to do that if it's what you have the passion for. Like I actually had the idea to do a longer thing with Gideon and Bartholomew a while back, and it was just sitting on my whiteboard. It was just something that I wanted to get to. And then it kind of came to a point where I just didn't have anything in the queue as the next thing. And I just had to kind of realize I have this idea. I already know what it is. more or less from beginning to end. So let's just do it now because it's something that I want to do. I'm just kind of like holding it off a little bit because I'm apprehensive about doing something long because it's just, because it's just, it's more of a commitment.
I could see the Gideon and Bartholomew characters becoming a TV show, especially after that fan animation that you posted.
Oh, that was great.
The production value on that was incredible, and it the voices and everything were just, it all felt like it's just kind of, it's like when an animal gives birth to a critter that can walk and feed itself all, it's just
right.
Right? Like
right. Yeah, it's like it got out of my hands. It was living and breathing. So like, what's the next come after me and kill me?
Did you say when's it gonna come after you and kill you?
Yeah, well that's the conclusion of like, and then it's gonna come back for me.
It's very Luke Skywalker.
Well, we're nearly an hour, so we've got maybe 5 minutes left before we should wrap up.
Well, I'm game for taking any more questions or doing whatever. I wasn't sure what our timeline was, so.
Well, we don't have to finish an hour, but I just start feeling a little bit guilty taking up so much of your times.
I don't have plans. If you want more material for when you edit this up for YouTube, I'm fine to keep chatting. It's been interesting.
That's very generous. Shay asked a question. Derek, you've typed in an answer. The question being, this has been a big year for gallows humor. Do you guys find yourself saving ideas for a time when certain ideas aren't so on the nose? And Derek, do you want to expand on that before Ryan answers?
Well, it's I without specific examples of what on the nose looks like. Obviously, I haven't done anything specific to what's going on in the news, unless you're looking at it in a symbolic or metaphorical sense. So in that sense, I don't think what I'm doing is any more on the nose now than it was a year ago, before all this mess. I feel like there's always, I'm a pretty neurotic person. I always feel like there's a reason for gallows humor. There's always a reason to be looking for the sky to fall. So, or looking at the aftermath once it has, and trying to find a way to laugh your way through it. So yeah, I think about 3 weeks out, and I don't expect that when this is all finally passed, life is still going to be messed up and weird and mysterious and scary as hell. So there will always be a place for gallows humor, and I guess it will always be on the nose, at least for me in that respect. Hope that wasn't too vague.
No, though I still do want to know what your COVID specific joke is. So maybe later if you don't want to share it publicly.
Yeah, I'll share it with you afterwards, because it was, everybody is one of those ones where like, it's one of the few that made my wife laugh out loud, like actually really, really guffaw. And whenever that happens, I take careful note. It did very well. I don't know about you, Ryan, actually, I wanted to ask you, when you write stuff, I set up a SurveyMonkey survey and send it out to about 15 trusted friends to garner their reactions before I put it out in the Twitter sphere or whatever. And then this one performed like off the charts. Everybody loved it, which says a lot about the people that do my reviewing, because it was a pretty dark, like really dark joke. But nonetheless, one of them, who's a father of two, and is a very conscientious and politically correct fellow, urged me not to run the joke. Not now, not later. And it's just not going to do me any favors. And I appreciate that. I need that voice, because I've made mistakes in the past. And I get freaked out when people start to take jokes the wrong way online. I don't go looking for a fight. That's why I'm not a political cartoonist. So
I've got a question for you. I don't want this to sound like a criticism or anything, because it's just, I think it's something that that probably follows around all of us cartoonists. But I've had moments in the past, like you try and keep that muscle working at all times, like in case you've got like a good idea that could work as a comic.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, like a few times in the past, like you have to rein yourself in just to be like, some things are just a funny sentence to say just then and then forget about it. Like something, you still have to be funny in your life. You know what I mean?
Right. It doesn't all have to be a joke that you share with the world.
Right. Like, so like if something, if you had like a particularly really funny idea that is in a text message or whatever, like not everything is material. I don't know. I just kind of connected that just with my own experience, because yeah, you're always trying to mine your own life in a way. I've had
You said mine your own life, like use autobiographical material, however.
Yeah. Like if something silly happens, or if you have like a thought that is just a funny thought. It's good to just play around and see if you can put that through the funnel filter that eventually creates content. But I don't know. I guess my strange connection was, when you were talking about the COVID idea, it brought to mind a couple times where, like, myself, I'd have something that I would think, oh, this is really good, and then I would show it to some people to be like, is this the gem that I think it is? And then every now and then you get that response that's like,
So you don't generally do that. You don't do that. Like, you put stuff out that no one else has looked at, like not even, a couple of people have seen. Like, you just put it out and you trust that your taste is enough to know that it'll work.
Yes.
Wow.
But it took me a little while to get there. I used to be a lot more, like I tend to show my wife everything. Because she's very smart, and we live so close together. And I used to a few of my friends and I were in a crit group together, like an art critique group, and so I'd show them some things here and there, especially if it's an idea that I was like, I'm not sure about this, but it's funny, like eventually you do, or at least I found, like, some things I'll definitely still want to show because I'm like, I don't know, this is kind of coming a little out of left field, but at the same time, like, it is nice to build up the confidence and the courage that even if somebody who you respect doesn't necessarily see what you're getting at, like, you have that creative confidence that, this is my vision that I wanted to put out there, for better or worse.
Well, then you're a much braver man than I am. That's for sure. I never know what's gonna be funny to people. Honestly, it always surprises me what jokes will stick, and at least half of my jokes never get off the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
I crank them out and I see what sticks. I'm too close to them and too sort of precious about them, I think. Unless I sat on it, put it away for a 9 months, like Stephen King says to do with writing, and come back to it, and then you have that objectivity, see if it actually makes you laugh. Otherwise, I'm on a 3-week cycle, so I don't have the objectivity to know. It's like it would be like going to a small comedy club where there's just a couple of people, try and get material that's still written on a notepad, versus having your HBO special every week with material that you've never tested. That's how it feels like to me.
Funny, you do see some cartoonists online who will repost something that they did maybe like 3 or 4 years earlier, and they'll say like, hey, this was something I did and I wanted to take another run at it because I think maybe I missed a couple parts that should have been more emphasized, or this, that, and the other. And I don't know, that's valid. I've put 1 or 2 comics out there that I've sort of felt a little bit like George Lucas, doing a special edition and changing things up.
Oh, right.
But I don't know, sometimes it's totally worthwhile to do that.
do you get called out on I mean, do you ever get, are there ever been jokes where like the reaction's been so negative, people have taken offense and you've decided to just pull it, you know? Is that,
No,
I don't imagine that happens with your brand of humor that much, eh? Like you don't offend people too much, right?
no, I don't think so. I mean, I think the worst that I get is people pointing out that like a point that I make could have been better served if it was in this order instead, or something like that. Just like something with the functionality of the comic
Yeah,
is
that's
more what
interesting.
I get. Like especially if I'm rushing to do it and then publish it like super late at night.
Yeah.
And then in the light of day, I'm like, oh yeah, nope, that could have used a couple more things.
Right.
That's usually if I get something like that.
And does that drive you crazy, or are you able to let it go?
For the most part, I'm able to let it go, especially if it's valid. Like one thing I can remember a while back, like I posted something where somebody had a cape, and um, and the cape, like I ended up publishing it just because my schedule was so tight. I published this comic online at like 2 a.m, and then somebody pointed out, like I saw it like when I woke up the next morning, that the cape didn't follow through this person's legs, like so there was a big gap there. I was like, oh well, what? Like that's totally valid. I should have caught that. I ended up fixing it. Yeah,
And
my
reposting?
sorry.
You reposted it then?
I don't know if I did or if I did where I could. Sometimes you don't have the option.
Yeah.
So I addressed it in places I could, and I just owned up like that's a totally valid comment. I shouldn't be posting this late at night anymore. That kind of thing.
Lesson learned. Yeah.
I mean, I would like the cape to be full, so.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the plans going forward for both of you? You're going to carry on doing the same kind of thing, building on your audiences. Do you have any plans to try something different? Hopefully more books coming down the line.
That's nice. Nice that you're interested. I totally plan on carrying on cranking out the single panel cartoons until I'm not able to anymore. But in addition to that, I am working on a more narrative graphic novel style thing, which I'd be happy to. I might have mentioned it to you already, but anyway, it involves alien birds, and that I'm working on right now. Sort of like 3-4 days a week, I'll get up and I'll draw cartoons, and for Bogart Creek, and then a couple days of the week I'll dedicate to that instead, because I found that the incrementalness of the Bogart Creek, method that I've got it's a good way to build a book. If you keep on sort of thinking about the overall arch and the story and the backstories of the characters and all that stuff, you wind up with a bunch of spreadsheets and charts and journals, and you never actually wind up writing the thing, at least for me. Whereas I found with the, just a little bit, half an hour of writing every day becomes a book in the end. So I'm going to try and apply that to a narrative this time and see if it works. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, as far as what the future plans are, keep publishing more comics online, and there's about 2 or 3 projects that I'd really like to put together to get something published. They're all kind of formulating behind the scenes, but as far as just like keeping things going, yeah, I'd like to keep doing what I'm doing, and kind of as much as possible give myself the option to kind of change things up a little bit when if anything starts to get stale, and really just kind of maybe pursue 1 or 2 ideas that require a little bit of more commitment from the reader. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to do kind of more of the same, but different, just to keep things fresh a little bit.
That sounds
Like
great.
Gideon and Bartholomew getting a time machine. Sorry, Alexander.
Yes, well, I shouldn't say yes, but I've been thinking about a time machine with those two for months.
Awesome.
Who knows if it'll ever happen, but I will always wonder.
What if?
Yeah.
Right on.
Well, I'm loving everything that you guys are doing. I really enjoy working with you both, and as well as being incredibly creative and talented cartoonists, I like the positive attitude you have to your work and to collaborating with me as a publisher and being professional about it as well. It makes what I have to do pretty stress-free. So I do appreciate it. Thank you. And I
Thank
look
you.
forward to our relationship growing, and I am doing my best to find more publishers around the world that will take both your worlds to more readers. So hopefully there'll be
Emailing you 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was one of the smartest things I've ever done. So really, really, really glad that we met back at the Lethbridge Comic-Con, however long ago it was, and truly grateful that you've given me this opportunity twice now. You know, being published when you're actually creating the content and building the audience simultaneously is pretty rare, I think. Usually you don't do collections until you've already been more established. So it was wonderful to be able to be in print, you know, which is always just, you know, you can't beat holding a book in your hands. So it means a lot. And it's been, I'm sure you're much easier to work with than I am. So I'm glad, I'm relieved that you enjoyed working with me, but it's an absolute pleasure working with you. So thank you, Alexander, and everyone at Renegade Arts Entertainment.
Yeah, very nice experience for sure. And definitely, like, touching on what you were saying, Derek, like, so important for people who create stuff just to get it, like, truly get it out there. Like, I hear so much from people who just do their own thing and create their stuff, but don't have the confidence maybe to share it with people, other than their really close knit group. So I mean, there's so many stories out there. Just connect with people, send stuff, and you'd be surprised. You know, like, it's so important. It's such an important part of the process if you want to get your stuff out there, to just become comfortable with doing it. You know, even if it's a half-baked idea.
Absolutely, just do it. Have thick skin, and
yeah, for sure.
No, you don't have to. It's not. Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah.
Not,
yeah.
It doesn't just come out. I look back on the stuff that I started drawing and the stuff I'm doing now, and all the stuff I did at the beginning might be, in its own way, funnier because it was so poorly drawn. I can definitely see, you know, the evolution. And if I, again, like writing a longer book, if you just think about like how careful you've got to be all along the way so that it's perfect in the end, instead of embracing those mistakes and frankly realizing that's what makes it good, you'll never get off the starting line.
Yeah, for sure.
very good advice for anyone who might be watching who's struggling with trying to get their first book done. No names mentioned. But yeah, just do it, dude.
Don't be afraid to suck.
Don't be afraid to suck, especially in public.
Right.
Well, anybody who's pursuing anything has to go through a period where they're not good at what they're pursuing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of it.
All right. Well, I think we should wrap things up. Ryan,
Sure.
Derek, thank you so much for joining me. This has been awesome. I hope everyone has enjoyed it. Both their books, Awkward Pause, Bogart Creek, volumes 1 and 2 are available at all good bookstores across Canada, America, and the world. And also from our web store. And we're doing a special deal. So if you buy both books, you'll get $5 off for the time being. Yeah, you can find Honey Dill on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere else?
You can find Honey Dill on Tapas right now. If you read Tapas, you can find it on Reddit here and there. But pretty much, yeah, like the three big, huge names in social media. You can find us.
Great. And Derek, Bogart Creek is, I'll let you,
Primarily, sorry.
I'll let you reel off the list because yours is a little bit longer.
Well, regular updates are Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays on Instagram and Facebook, and then like once a month I'll do a comic dump on Imager if I'm good and holding up to my responsibilities to that wonderful audience. And then I do have quite a bit on Tapas and Line Webtoons, but it's not. I've been dropping the ball on that lately. Beyond that, I don't think there's anywhere else worth looking. Although if you just type in @Bogart Creek into Google, you'll probably get some other things.
Do you not post much on Twitter?
No, I find, well, it's frustrating because the preview on Twitter is landscape, and it always like, I think it, you know, if you're doing sequential art, then maybe it doesn't kill the joke. But if your joke requires 3 seconds to get the whole thing in one go, and when you look at it, you've got the lower half of the panel, possibly with the caption there. I don't know. I don't feel like, it just bothers me. I feel like I have to redraw the joke so that it's widescreen. So I don't post on Twitter as much as I probably should.
No, I don't think it makes a huge difference. You do very well on the platforms that you share with.
You can't complain.
And your fans are finding you. Okay, any last words?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, just I guess if anybody's watching right now, or if you're watching the recording, thanks. It's been fun, and hopefully, maybe in the future you can find us doing more stuff like this.
Yeah, this was fun. That'd be great. And yeah, thank you everybody who was watching and everybody who will, and everybody who enjoys our comics. And thank you, Alexander and Ryan. It was nice meeting you.
Yes. Like.
Thank you both. Apologies for the technical difficulties. I will, when we wrap, I will edit the bits of the video together and then put it up onto YouTube, Facebook, and wherever people watch videos. Vimeo, probably.
There you go.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Take care. Best of luck with everything. Stay safe, healthy, well, and hopefully enjoy the festive period.
You too. Happy holidays.
Hey, stay safe, everybody.
Bye.